Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air. Really exciting one today because I'm joined by James Isilay. James, many of you will know, is the founder and CEO of one of the fastest growing SaaS firms out there, and that is Cognism. Known James for a few years now. Delighted to have him on the show. Sat at dinner with James at an event recently and was just absolutely stunned by some of the things that he's learned on his journey. So I asked him to come on the show to talk around that, the founder journey, some of the lessons he's learned, some of the things that he's tried that haven't worked, some of the things that he's tried that definitely have worked. And I'm sure there are many of those. And hopefully we can learn from that experience. So first and foremost, James, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks, Owen, and yeah, pleasure to be on the show. Yeah, great. I'm just, as I said just before the show, I'm just about to head off to Ibiza for President's Club, so very excited about that.
Yeah,
Catching
absolutely.
up on a couple of years of not doing anything with the team.
Brilliant. Yeah, what a great opportunity to do that after the last couple of years. And look, great to have you in holiday mood. Hopefully, we get you giving us nice and relaxing, giving us lots of learnings across the conversation. Really excited to have you on. So we're going to talk about a bit about that journey, but before we decide to dive into topic, many people will know you, some won't. For those that don't know you, could you just give us 2 minutes? And we ask all our guests to give us 2 minutes. Who's James? Who are Cognism?
Sure. So my background is I was a software engineer. I went to Imperial College in London, did computer engineering. After I graduated, I worked in investment banking. So I helped build a lot of software systems for UBS. And then I went into trading. And then I, became a trader. I traded oil, German power, and carbon. I built computer programs that traded the markets versus me making the decisions just by myself. I did that all the way to 2015, and then I left my job and started Cognism. Cognism originally was a fintech company, so originally, because I was in the financial industry, I wanted to build a fintech, and then the original idea was to help hedge funds find their next best sources of money, funds. But when we built that product out, and then we were on an accelerator program called Winton Labs. We found that they weren't the best of clients. So then we pivoted into sales and marketing. And so Cognism now is a B2B sales intelligence provider. So we're providing key contacts and who your next best customer is to help companies with outbound in particular at the moment, sales teams to really build sales pipeline.
Love that. Love that. Thank you so much. Now you've mentioned Outbound there. I want to ask you about Outbound first, because one of the reasons I know Cognism, I found out about Cognism in the first place, was that somebody Outbound phoned me. They called me in the early days of Cognism, cold call, classic old school cold call, in again, and I knew about Cognism, and obviously I followed the journey. Now a customer, done a fair bit of work together, by backwards and forwards. And I guess that the outbound piece has played a really key role in your growth and your strategy. It's clearly something you've invested in, something you believe in, something that you've really, or that's really fed a chunk of your business growth. Was that something you came into with a view on? Was outbound always going to be a key strategy from you from day one?
I would say like I'm a so I'm a technical founder, so I'm like a software engineer. Like my background, and I didn't really have a lot of experience in sales. I'd done sales a little bit in the investment bank. I had a sales role for a little while, but that was super easy sales, right? Because at a bank, you basically have all your customers and they just call you. So it wasn't where I had to do outbound myself. So I think I'd read a bit about setting up a go-to-market strategy. Jason Lemkin is a great resource from Sastra. The book by Aaron Ross, who's now on our board. I'd read those books, and had from that had a view on the system. Then I made the decision to hire an experienced salesperson, which our head of sales at the beginning was Naz McCubbin. She was fantastic, and she had that outbound experience and had designed the initial team and structure. So she come in with a view to set up that outbound motion, and I think we began, especially when you're an early stage company, like looking back, outbound is really, I think, a great place to go to start, because you can really hone and get immediate impact from your messaging in a way that you don't quite get it from the marketing angle. So I think another lesson I had was which I think came from Y Combinator, was hiring two. So we hired two SDRs to begin with, and struggled there in terms of our initial quality of hire, but it got us the motion going, and it got us testing language and testing our messaging out there and when you're doing outbound, you can get feedback on that messaging immediately to see if it's resonating or not resonating, and then you can adjust quickly. Whereas I think that's a bit of a longer process with marketing if you can find a good marketer, because that's the other problem with marketing, is that actually finding good marketers when you don't really have much budget is extremely painful. It took us years to get to a great position on inbound marketing. So I think that I'm happy. I wouldn't say I had a specific view on it, but I'm happy that it's actually where we began, and it really set us off on the right track.
Yeah, love that. And look, maybe I should take a step backwards for a moment. Founded in 2016, I think, is that right?
I originally started kind of like tinkering with it in 2015, but yeah, 2016 was really when I quit my job and then went full time doing the accelerator program on the initial fintech idea, and then we pivoted into sales and marketing in 2017.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And just give a quick summary of where you are today. So what's happened since 2016 and where are you at now?
Sure. So we've had very consistent growth since we started, and I attribute that to the fact that from probably the end of 2017, we built something called the sales capacity model, which really drove like how we did hiring on a monthly basis and how we allocated marketing budget just extremely consistently. So we've had very consistent growth. We literally have only really had 1 month, which was March 2020, where revenue dipped. Like literally 1 month. And last year we went from 11 million AR to 22 million AR, and currently we're at 32 million AR. So we've gone from 22 to 32 million AR so far this year. So we're growing very consistently. We pretty much always hit our plan, our monthly plan. And that's something I'm quite proud of with the company in terms of the go-to-market has been extremely consistent. Even during difficult times, and even during what we have a very different product now than the product we had, say, in 2017, 2018, where we essentially just had contact data with emails, and now we're more of a cold outbound calling tool where I'd say like our prime asset is really our mobile phones and the quality of the mobile phone data that we have globally.
Yeah, really interesting. Amazing to that story. And I think it's good context for people watching and listening just to understand as we talk about the journey to get to that point. So I know you're really big on mentorship, and you talked to me in the past about it and mentioned it before our call today as well. Talk to me about the role that that's played. You have a mentor, as I understand it, you give your key execs within the business a specific mentor from outside of the business as well. And it sounds like it's been a real intentional strategy for you across the growth of the business.
Yeah, so for one of our first angel investors, and again, this was a little bit random in that we got this angel investor was somebody called Tom James, who's a serial UK like angel investor, and had a very successful exit himself. So he was like I would say my initial mentor, and he was just fantastic in terms of helping us get initial customers and just giving key advice. And the thing about I think startup world is, there's a key stat which I heard again at conference yesterday, that most startups die in their first 2 years.
Yeah.
It's such a fragile little baby that you have, that if you can have great products. If you've got terrible go-to-market, you're going to die. If you've got a terrible product, I think you could go a bit further with good go-to-market and a terrible product, but eventually you'll die. But you could also just make mistakes. Like one of our competitors decided, raised a Series A, went all in on the US market, hired extremely expensive people, and then had to close down and burn all that money in a very short period of time, even though they at the time I would say that they had a better product on the market. But they just made a mistake of going into the US market too early at probably very high cost. So the thing is, you can just make a mistake. Like my board stopped me making, my advisor, my board stopped me making that mistake, like literally at the same time our competitor did it. And I wanted to do it because you just get so allured. Oh, it's the US market, it's so big, it's it's so easy, the money, but it's a really tough market just because of the competition and so many companies there. The cost of acquisition is so expensive, staff are so expensive. So it's just having people that have done the journey before, ideally just done the journey before you. So they've got current knowledge. They just tell you, don't step on that landmine, don't make that mistake. And I just think that building a company is actually really simple. It's actually a very simple process. It's just making one or two key mistakes, and then it just can be killed so easily, and that's why most die. I think most companies die because of just terrible go-to-market strategy. That's my view. It's less so to do about the product. It's mostly just poor go-to-market planning that kills most young companies.
Yeah, and I think that was epitomised what you said there. A company that probably had a better product than you did at the time, but didn't get their strategy right on go-to-market and on growth. Ran out of runway, and there's no cash left, and there's only one option at that point unless you can move quickly. So really interesting to hear that story. You've no doubt made mistakes. Sounds like you've had mentors there. You've avoided a lot of the common mistakes, which is great. But you've probably got some things that you can look back on and go, yeah, that was a mistake. Didn't get that right. Is there anything that comes to mind on that journey?
The first one's people. For sure. Like, hiring is so critical. Like, you can just get the wrong hires and they can be very disruptive, and they can just slow you down, and maybe even be fatal, unless you actually get them out of the company quickly. So take time hiring and fire quick, is good. But it's, like, we were actually quite bad at hiring SDRs until we brought in an external consultant that was recommended by Tom James called Nick Keating, who's fantastic, in terms of helping with go-to-market, helping with customer success strategy. He still helps us monthly doing what we call a revenue operations pack, where we review the performance of the sales team. So, bringing in that kind of expertise to kind of like help you just get your hiring processes right, especially if you're a technical founder that's never built a sales team before or customer success team before, or you just I've always hired engineers, so I'm good at hiring engineers, right? But I wasn't very good at hiring salespeople initially. I think I'm better at it now. But there's different personality types, right? And you have to, a salesperson can always sell themselves, right? Even if they're a terrible salesperson, they probably at least have the core skill that they can sell themselves. So actually, just seeing through the filters that people put up, the masks people put up, is super important to get those hires right, because it can just be lethal at an early stage to get those hires wrong. And then that would be one key thing. I mean, the other one, just more structurally, is just but maybe we developed that a little bit later at the right time, is just splitting the customer success and the account management functions. That was one, so that you have salespeople doing renewals and upselling versus CS people who aren't salespeople doing renewals. Like that was a critical lesson for us. And then another one, I would say packaging and pricing. I mean, one of the things in SaaS world, right, where we live, and if you're going for a strategy of getting venture funded and that getting you more rapid scaling, is just focus. The VCs focus so heavily on net retention. You can design for it, but if you don't do that from an early stage, it gets harder to adjust for it later. But designing your packaging and pricing to get net retention over 100% or well over 100%, it's just incredibly useful for fundraising at a later stage. You just have to really understand that VCs are pretty much like machines. They take your stats, they throw them into the same spreadsheet, almost every single VC fund, and then they spit out a yes or no. And you shouldn't expect a different behavior from a different VC, because they literally like pretty much most of them use all the same formula. So you just need to optimize your packaging and pricing, your planning on go-to-market for that, and I think that can be incredibly powerful if done from an early stage. So those are some of, I think, my big key lessons.
Yeah, really interesting, fascinating. The people bit is clearly critical, regardless of the business model, whether it's SaaS, whether it's services, whatever. It's going to be critical in any business. I'm keen to understand how your strategy has evolved around bringing key people into the business, because I guess in the early stage, you only have so much choice. You only know so many people. Your employer brand is not what it would be today. Whereas today, you've got a stronger employer brand, a bigger network, you're more credible as an organization. So I'm guessing that strategy has been able to evolve, and you've also changed in terms of getting clarity on what you need and what's important. And you said there, getting better at hiring salespeople, for example. No doubt
Yeah.
you get better at hiring key execs as well. So I'm keen to hear about that evolution.
Yeah, there's definitely different people for different stages. I have seen that, so it's a physical fact. I definitely like some of our employees have scaled, and mentors really help with that. If somebody's got a mentor, they're far more likely to scale to the next stage of the business and keep scaling. And I think it's important. Like I do it as well, but key execs need to do it as well. Of just ensuring that you keep having like mentors that for the next stage of the growth that you have. So you're kind of scaling your mentors as the company scales.
Yeah.
I think that's critical. I think when people haven't scaled with the company, they haven't really had strong mentorship, and so that's a key lesson. It's also a red flag for an exec if they don't want to have a mentor. For me, there's an issue, and they're highly unlikely to scale. And it also might maybe highlights that some weakness you might have in that department. If there's nobody auditing it, there's got like an external pair of eyes. So that's one key thing. In terms of hiring, I think like you should have different strategies really. Like if you're pre-seed and you don't have a lot of money, like I got some great hires on Angel List. We did use recruiters as well, but you need like a different type of person. You need like people that are high energy, want equity, like see the bigger picture that if this startup goes well, they're going to be, they're not just going to earn a great salary, they're going to be millionaires, right? Like that's the difference, right? Like and actually very few people have that mentality, right? I was quite lucky to have a couple of early my early key employees, early employees, that I found on Angel List or Upwork, had that view, had that vision, were and myself, naive about the industry, which is great. I think that people that are experienced in the industry, in a industry, would probably come into it and go, well, there's not much to be done here. There's not much to disrupt here, and not be as enthusiastic and like just have that energy to just go through problems, right? Like when you're early stage in the first, like I say, like first 3 years of a company, highly likely your product is going to suck, right? Highly likely that your your team is not going to be that great. Like you're just going to have every weakness and every problem. You just can't look, the team can't see it like that. They just have to have the energy just to not to see any problems and just to be tackling actually the next actual immediate issue, and not be worried about the fact that there is these giant competitors out there, or that they've only got a tiny budget or whatever it is. You just need to have this blind faith to kind of like power through those stages, get some initial traction, get funding, and then just keep rolling. And then 4 years later you'll probably have a decent product. Or if you look at some famous companies like HubSpot, or HubSpot in particular, but Salesforce, you have a terrible product but a great go-to-market, and then you buy a competitor that has a great product but a terrible go-to-market, right? So there's always ways to get a great company if you plan and you get your strategy right.
Yeah, look, you've 2 or 3 times linked into how important the go-to-market is, right? Yeah, products. You can go better with good go-to-market and not so good products than you can the other way around, and I'd certainly agree with that. Keen to understand what lessons you've learned from your go-to-market. So there's obviously different strategies that you use to acquire customers. What have been your best strategies? What have been your best channels? What are the things that you've tried that didn't work? I'm just keen to get some better learnings around that.
I think overall we kept it simple, right? Like in terms of outbound and inbound, and making sure that your outbound sales capacity is just expanding all the time, right? And then of course, I just don't think that people plan that well, right? Or they plan that very not very aggressively. I mean, I'm looking at some US companies now. I was looking at one the other day that has gone from 0 to unicorn, and got the customer growth in 2 years, like literally 2 years. You can scale companies incredibly quickly now if you just plan it, because once you've got an initial motion working, that if you do X number of dials and you get Y number of meetings, that you're gonna get Z number of opportunities that are gonna close, right? If you know that math, then why wouldn't you just pour lots of money into that math if you can scale it, right? If you can hire the people and manage the team and do that organically as fast as possible, like it's just money left on the table if you don't do it. Somebody else is going to build the sales capacity and take the market. So that's the way that I think founders and VCs should look at it, but they just don't. The VCs in particular are really disappointing on this, in that, you know, whenever we took a money, they just haven't looked and revised and advised on go-to-market strategy like very well at all. And I just think that that's something that's so badly done at the moment, you know, that, and it could be done so much better. And that's just really, you know, it's not even like it's a 2-day workshop session where that's kind of like planned out and tackled. And it's just, yeah, it's just something that's not really done at the moment in a good way.
It's interesting. I'm, you know, you guys are an absolute fantastic case study for some of the stuff that I preach around to our clients in particular in the market. You know, which is around that, you know, giving it time to work out that maths. Once you get there, you know, you've got to be brave to get there, right? Because you've got to keep investing in something that you're learning at, that you're failing in, you know, that doesn't work the way you want it to from day one. But once you get there, it's well worth the investment. I'm keen to just understand two things. One is, how long did it take for you to be able to have some certainty around those metrics? So you start day one. When was it that you went, I get the outbound metrics now, they're plateaued out, they're settled, and I can rely on them?
I think it, like time wise, it was probably towards the end of 2017, our first year, and it was when I really developed that sales capacity model. Like we, you know, I wasn't thinking, you know, I'd read a lot of sales books, but I wasn't really thinking about it in the way that we then started thinking about it. And then we had a board meeting, and one of our investors said, you know, why don't you just work backwards, like work out revenue you want to be at, and then work out the number of leads that you need to get there. And then I started to just put that together in a spreadsheet, and then built like, you know, a fairly simple model. But then it was like, okay, then we need to make this number of hires every single month, and we need to allocate this budget every month. And then all of my fundraising, all of my strategy, and then we just made sure that we made the hires. And we had, you know, 2 SDRs that would start with that had then started to be consistent, and then, you know, we just got the maths of being consistent for a couple, like 2 or 3 months, and then it just became like, it was just physical after that point, right? It's just physics, it's just maths and it's physics, and then the numbers are almost always the same. That's the thing that surprises me in terms of, like, you know, if you look at people that have the machine running, you know, the maths is, you know, not exactly the same, but it's very similar across companies. So it's a very physical process of outreaching, doing X number of calls, getting, you know, Y number of meetings, and then Z number of ops closing, right? Like, it's just very physical. And it's just getting that system up and running that's the hard part. And so, you know, and then, you know, it might be that some of that maths might change if we're going to recession. But, you know, like, whenever we slip, like, you know, for instance, like, whenever we couldn't make the hires on the SDRs, or we messed up and we didn't get the hires in, then we could just pump up the marketing budget, and we know that we get the meetings, and we know we'd be back on track very quickly. So, you know, like that. And I think that's something that is easy to do SMB mid-market, and it gets a bit tougher to do at enterprise for sure, because you have the slower sales cycles, which is why I would always kind of encourage companies to start in, if they can, SMB mid-market, because, you know, you're going to just be able to build that math easier and that consistent machine easier.
I think that's really interesting. So just to clarify on that, you reckon it took you probably towards the end of the first year before you could go, right, I get the maths around how many meetings, how long, you know, how many SDRs can book how many meetings, and how many meetings will turn into what kind of, what number of acquisitions. It's probably about a year.
Yeah, I would say that was just luck of my life. I think I could do, if I was starting a brand new company now, we could do that in 3 months, right? Like, it was just lack of knowledge at the time. And you know, it's just, again, it's always just keeping it simple. And then just getting the maths running, and then just making sure that once you understand the maths, that you can just keep making the hires, and you can just increase revenue capacity, like, call it revenue capacity, number of SDRs, number of marketing spend, right? Those two simple things, just keep on increasing that capacity, and you will see the results, you will see the scaling. Unless you're really bad at managing, you know, you can mess it up by, like, okay, yeah, you really badly manage those SDRs, or you know, you maybe hit some capacity in the market, but again, if you've got a big TAM, that shouldn't be an issue.
And I think that's obviously a point to make. You've got your addressable market is fairly broad, so that's a really nice position to be in. And I think what's interesting there, and I guess the point I'm getting at here, is that most founders doing it for the first time don't have the knowledge that you also didn't have at that time. It's always easy in hindsight, isn't it? So the education piece, the takeaway here is,
Yeah.
I guess my point I'm trying to get across is that it does take time to get there. Once you're there, you can double down, triple down, do whatever you want to do, invest with some certainty, but the maturity behind those metrics takes time
Well,
to build.
one of the mistakes I've seen though quite a few times is that people get to the not that understanding, they have the metrics, but then they just don't increase the sales capacity after that, and they keep it flat, and they're like, okay, and then next fundraise or next budget, then or when, they don't really have a plan about when they're going to add sales capacity.
Yeah.
And that is usually why they don't grow so quick, right? Like you need that capacity plan, and
Yeah.
it should be as aggressive as possible, and
Yeah.
VC should be encouraging their companies to make that as aggressive as possible.
Yeah. I'm interested to just get your take on something. So a lot of the clients that we would work with are not necessarily VC funded, or they're early stage, or they're looking at profitability out of investment rather than scale. So, that doesn't mean they can't go hand in hand, but, naturally, sometimes you can run for a period of time focused on scale and not so worried about the P&L piece, because, it's about speed of growth. I'm keen to understand whether your outbound operation does run at a profitable level, whether it's still about scale and acquisition for you, and kind of just a bit of narrative around your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, that's about. I want to build a big company, a big global company. I want Cognism to be a unicorn one day. I'm not looking to build a lifestyle business,
Mm.
and I enjoy. I do. I say, like, sometimes it's a bit tiring, but I enjoy the fundraising process. It really helps you to, like, you get challenged by people that see lots and lots of businesses. And so, like, for me, this was always part of a journey about how do I become like a great successful CEO of a big
Yeah.
multinational company. Like, that's what I wanted to do. That was my ambition. And so I think this is it's good to get funded because you get challenged on the ideas. You get really smart people, like, that are deep in finance, deep into understanding how you make a company go public. And your company has to be in the best of shapes to be a public company. So for me, it's a giant learning experience, and there is and there has been for me a good monetary reward on the way.
Mm.
And so I'm excited to be on this journey now. You could do it completely differently and bootstrap it, and then have a business that you can sell, like a very profitable business. It'll be far easier to sell a profitable business, and you'd still make a great amount of money out of that as well. And maybe after I do Cognism, the next company is a completely bootstrap company, because I actually now have all the knowledge and I have money to do a
Mm.
complete bootstrap company. But I think this is a better. Personally, I would say to founders like thinking of bootstrap or VC funded, if it's your first ever company, you're going to learn a lot more if you go the VC journey, and you're going to get a lot more knowledge, and that and your journey should be in theory faster than if it
Mm.
was bootstrapped. And then you could do bootstrap the next time, right? And I see a lot of founders do that, who want to be serial entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So I think that I wouldn't change the approach that I wouldn't go back in time and change the way that we did it. I think
Yeah.
the way that we've done it, it has been the best for me in terms of the knowledge that I've gained about how to run a company and being a great CEO, and how to build a SaaS company.
Yeah, what I love about that is it's intentional. I think a lot of CEOs are still changing settings all of the time, trying to work out what they want to be. You've got a very clear vision, and you're intentionally building strategy around that. So kudos to you. I want to just check in on the phone. So every time you've talked about those metrics, and every time you've talked about Gotomarket and SDR and outbound, you've gone, how many calls are there? You've not mentioned any other channels. That's not to say they're not there. I
Yeah.
just want to understand Cognism's relationship and your take on the phone as a tool in outbound, because I know a lot of people are critical, don't understand, don't use it anymore, moving away from it.
Yeah.
You've built a business and an outbound go-to-market strategy. It's hugely successful, as I understand it, with the phone being your primary tool still.
Yeah. I mean, the phone is, for me personally, it's the best channel. Like, it's the most effective channel. It has the highest response rate. You can have a conversation immediately. You can book in a meeting immediately. Right now, there's a case that yeah, like running a more sophisticated cadence, which includes phone, email, programmatic, potentially will 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 create more conversions or like a slightly higher rate. I mean, I just feel that like the first motion should be phone, and people should get, if you can get an SDR team comfortable phoning, I think that's the most effective way of doing it. Now, the I was just like myself, I never get called like ever. Like literally last year I got one call. I haven't had any calls this year, I think, at all to my mobile. So like I just don't, it's really not used that much. I would say compared to like all the really bad emails. I mean, the thing is that blows my mind is prospecting in 2022, or based on the emails that I get or the LinkedIn outreaches I get, feels almost the same as it was in 2016, right? Like it really feels like things haven't really moved very much in 6 years in terms of how it's done. Like I don't see that content's got more customized or tailored. When it does, when I get like the one or two I get per year, I immediately respond and I get very excited about that an SDR's actually spent the time to like find out something about me and personalize the content. So I just think the phone is like literally the most effective channel. You can build really consistent results on the phone. You just have to get really like grads or people with a bit of experience with it, because it's a pain, like it's a tough job, right? Like the SDRs that are doing cold outbound, it's one of the toughest jobs. And so but you need to, if you can build that talent pool, which we have, and which I think it's super powerful, and it really helps you scale. Like right now I say it's about 50-50 on average. 50% of our ops come from outbound and 50% come from inbound and marketing. And I wouldn't want to lose 50% because we didn't do outbound.
No, fair enough. Fantastic. I have two more questions for you. One is, what are you look back over the last 6 years, what are the biggest challenges you faced? What are the things that have kept you up at night, and the things that are, you really see as those massive achievements and hurdles that you've had to overcome?
I think every funding round is a massive like like if you're running a burn company, you can run out of cash, and that especially in the early days, that every founder I met like it pretty much has some story, especially if your first company you ever done, where you've run out of money and then somebody's had to bail you out. Like my dad put in money at one point to cover us for a couple of weeks for payroll, which he did very well out of in the end. So but like the um getting the funding rounds done like is each time it's a sea change in the company in terms of the resources you have and then what you can do. So those are big achievement points. It's funny, like I literally, like I rarely look back. I'm always focused on the problem right in front of me, and I rarely look back and go, oh, like I've literally only twice had moments where I've gone, wow, this is amazing what I've built. Once was one in 2018 where I took the team to Havar, and we went on a boats. There's about 30 of us at the time, and I looked at I look back at my team and go, wow, I got 30 people on my team, and I thought proud of what I built. And then recently we were on the Future 50, and we went to the London Stock Exchange, and then I was like, because I'd always dreamt of going on that program, and there I was completing it, and that felt wow, that was like a wow moment. In terms of like actual, but mostly I think what's helped the company is just the fact that we're always just focused on the problem right in front of us and fixing that thing to keep the growth going. I think okay, in terms of big things, I mean, we just did an acquisition of Casper in France. So that was a company we just acquired, which was, that was a great, because we didn't really have a product-led growth motion, and they had it. They really built from that. So now we acquired a company that's very good at product-led growth, and then we've got the direct sales model, and combining those two should be super powerful. And that's very exciting. It's just been so energizing to buy a company where the team is at that earlier stage and they have that energy. That's one thing I'd say that founders need to do, or they need to bring that energy to their team. And when you see it and feel it, and that's the reason I started Cognism, was when I visited a friend's company and had just this incredible energy. It just, you feel it when you're in a corporate job where there's literally zero energy, and you go into a place where everybody's happy, they're motivated, everybody's on a mission. It's a really different way of living, a lot better way of living. And so like that, that's one thing I'd say is a consistent, is just making sure that the company has that energy and it doesn't get corporate, stale corporate feeling to it.
Yeah. Final question for me. So James Isilay, you're a human, you've got a family, I know you've got kids, all that kind of stuff. 6 years into the journey, what did you say? 32 million ARR. What keeps you going? What keeps you've got this goal of the unicorn? What is it that drives you to keep going? Because I guess you could bail out any time and go, I've done well. This is I can be proud of what I've achieved. Like you say, you were proud at 30. How many people are you at now?
Yeah, 330.
330. So add 300, 10
Yeah.
times more proud of the number of people. There's lots of these things that at any stage you could technically say, cool, I've done an amazing job, done. But you're not. You keep going, something keeps driving you and something keeps motivating you to keep going. What is it?
I think it's seeing what the next stage is and how you can grow, right? Like if you're not growing, then it feels stale. I think mentorship again is really important there. I've just got so I've had Peter Deffrin, who sits on our board, who's a very experienced sales leader and sold companies. So he's been a great mentor and taught me things. Now I've got somebody called John Hamm, who is again like comes at things from a different perspective, very different energy. Again, I'm learning a lot from him. I've done an INSEAD course on international directors course at INSEAD, which I'm going to Singapore in 2 weeks to finish that course off. Again, about learning how to manage boards at bigger levels, and lots of interesting lessons there. So I think it's important that you as a founder keeps growing. You got to have. I just went to a fantastic talk yesterday from the founder of Grantry, who gave a talk about becoming a burlesque dancer, as well as being a founder, and that just gave her insane like energy for the role. But I think you also need to do. I like to go out with my staff. I like to go clubbing. Funnily enough, I'm going to, like, so I'm quite excited to go to FIFA recently today, and just spend time with the staff and then just have good times. Like it's important to celebrate and to have a release and to have something that you find really fun and not just do this. Because I think you can get, I've seen it, like I've seen a lot of founders get worn down doing the same thing if you have nothing really else apart from this one thing, and you don't have that vision of your growth. I think it can get really tiring because it isn't a job, right? Like this is like your child, right? Like this is your baby, and I work pretty much every day. Like I of course spend time with my family, but like there's not a day that I don't think about Cognism for sure. And I will work like most weekends. I've worked for 6 years and most weekends, so it's an incredible amount of work. And so until you've got a good exec team, which I'm just starting to get to now, you've got all that burden on you as a founder. Like the book starts with you on everything. So yeah, you need to have releases for your energy. And for me, yeah, it's spending time with staff, it's enjoying, it's celebrating our successes, and it's having great mentors and making sure that I'm learning and I keep growing as a CEO, and I can keep managing the next scale of the business.
Nice. So the key is clubbing by the sound of it.
Yeah, well, for me, just dancing, release the energy.
Love it. Well, look, on that note, I know you're wrapping up this call and you're straight off to Ibiza, so I will release you from your shackles and let you go and do some clubbing in Ibiza. But before I do that, who can Cognism help, and how can they get in touch with Cognism?
So Cognism can help companies that want to find new customers. So yeah, sorry, my phone just started to give me one second, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Awkward phone call. It's, as I said, like probably just at that point, somebody heard that I like that I don't get any cold calls, and so they decided to cold call me. Yeah, Cognism can really help any company, no matter how young or right through to the enterprise, find their next best customer. So we really have the most accurate mobile data in the world, mapped to individuals, plus emails, plus great intent signals. So we could really help you find your next best customer and to help you build the most efficient sales pipeline.
Love that. And I'm guessing onto the website, which is
www.cognism.com. So cognism.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, James Isilay at Cognism. I'm happy to help, especially early stage companies with reviewing their go-to-market strategy.
Love that. And James, I appreciate it, because, you know, a lot of people going from 0 to 32 million in 6 years wouldn't be as humble as you are to come and join us on the podcast and share your learnings. And you're always happy to talk and engage in this kind of stuff. And I think credit to you. So look, shackles off, go get your dancing shoes on, enjoy Ibiza, obviously a well-earned trip for President's Club. And thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's always a good conversation with you.
Absolutely. Cheers, James.
Take care. Bye.